It started with a warning most people in Tel Aviv have unfortunately learned to recognize: air raid sirens. Within seconds, phones buzzed with emergency alerts, families rushed into shelters, cars stopped in the middle of highways as drivers ran for cover. But this time, the scale was different. Radar systems detected not one missile, not 10, but an entire wave of ballistic projectiles rising from launch sites deep inside Iran. Then another wave, and another. Within a single night, Israeli defense systems were tracking what analysts estimate could be dozens of ballistic missiles headed toward central Israel. The sky above Tel Aviv lit up with interceptor launches. Trails of smoke crossed the darkness as defense batteries attempted to destroy the incoming threats. Explosions echoed across the coastline. Some were interceptions, others were impacts. In one of the largest missile barrages of the conflict so far, Iran appeared to test the limits of Israel's multi-layered defense network, systems designed to protect millions of civilians. But the question military analysts immediately began asking was simple. Why launch such a massive strike in a single night? Because ballistic missiles are not cheap weapons. Each launch represents a calculated decision. And when a country fires dozens of them in coordinated waves, it usually means something far bigger is happening behind the scenes. This was not just a random barrage. It was a strategic message. A message aimed directly at Israel and at the world watching the escalating confrontation between Iran and Israel. The real question now is whether this missile storm represents the beginning of a much larger escalation. Because when ballistic missiles start flying across the Middle East in large numbers, history shows the consequences rarely remain contained. The massive missile barrage did not come out of nowhere. For months, tensions between Iran and Israel had been building toward a dangerous breaking point. Both countries view each other as major strategic threats. Israel sees Iran's missile arsenal and nuclear ambitions as an existential risk. Iran views Israel as a powerful regional rival backed by Western military alliances. For years, the conflict remained mostly indirect. Cyber attacks, covert operations, proxy battles across the region. But recently, those shadow confrontations have become far more visible. Airstrikes have targeted military facilities, missiles have crossed borders, and both sides have begun sending increasingly clear signals that they are prepared for escalation. According to military analysts, the latest missile barrage appears to be part of a larger strategy. Iran possesses one of the largest missile arsenals in the Middle East. By launching large waves of ballistic missiles, Tehran can attempt to overwhelm air defense systems designed to intercept smaller numbers of incoming threats. This tactic is known as saturation attack strategy. The idea is simple. If enough missiles are launched at once, some may penetrate even advanced defense networks. For Israel, this creates a difficult challenge. Intercepting every incoming missile requires enormous resources, and each interceptor missile costs hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. That means prolonged missile exchanges can become a war of endurance, one where both sides try to test each other's defenses and resources. And the barrage toward Tel Aviv suggests the conflict may be entering a new phase, a phase where missile warfare becomes the primary battlefield. Military strategists often describe conflicts like this using a concept called the escalation ladder. Each step raises the stakes. Each step makes de-escalation harder. The early stages involve warnings, cyber operations, and limited strikes. The middle stages involve missile attacks against military facilities. But the higher levels involve strikes against major cities and critical infrastructure. The barrage toward Tel Aviv appears to move the conflict higher on that ladder, because Tel Aviv is not just another city. It is the economic and technological center of Israel. Financial markets, technology companies, and strategic infrastructure all operate from this metropolitan region. A sustained missile threat to this area has implications far beyond military targets. It affects civilian life, economic stability, and national morale. But there's another reason analysts are watching this escalation carefully. Ballistic missile warfare moves extremely fast. A missile launched hundreds of kilometers away can reach its target within minutes. That leaves little time for diplomacy once launches begin. Decisions must be made quickly. Interceptors must be fired instantly. And governments must prepare responses even before the full situation becomes clear. That speed increases the risk of miscalculation, and miscalculation in a missile conflict can rapidly spiral into a wider war. To understand the scale of the threat, it helps to look at the numbers. Iran is believed to possess thousands of ballistic missiles of varying ranges. Some can travel hundreds of kilometers. Others can reach targets over 1,000 kilometers away. These weapons form a central part of Iran's military strategy. Unlike traditional air forces, ballistic missiles allow strikes across long distances without risking pilots. Israel, meanwhile, has developed one of the world's most sophisticated air defense networks. This system includes multiple layers designed to intercept different types of threats: short-range rockets, medium-range missiles, and long-range ballistic weapons. But even the most advanced defense systems face challenges. Every interceptor launched costs money. Every defense battery has a limited number of missiles ready to fire, and large coordinated attacks can strain those defenses. That is why analysts believe large missile barrages are designed not just to cause damage, but to test the limits of defensive networks. The impact of this conflict extends far beyond the Middle East. The region sits at the center of global energy markets, shipping routes, and strategic alliances. When tensions rise here, the ripple effects can reach the entire world. Financial markets often react immediately to geopolitical instability. Oil prices can rise sharply when traders fear disruptions to energy supply. Shipping companies may reroute vessels to avoid conflict zones. And governments around the world begin monitoring the situation closely. Major powers including the United States, Europe, Russia, and China all have strategic interests in the region. A wider war could draw in multiple actors, transforming a regional confrontation into a global crisis. That is why analysts are paying close attention to missile exchanges like this one, because every escalation increases the risk that additional countries could become involved. So what does this massive missile barrage really mean? At one level, it represents another chapter in the long-running rivalry between Iran and Israel. But at another level, it may signal a turning point in how this conflict is unfolding. Modern warfare in the Middle East has evolved dramatically over the past 2 decades. Missile technology has advanced, defense systems have improved, and cyber warfare now plays a role alongside traditional military operations. But the fundamental dynamics remain the same: deterrence. Each side attempts to demonstrate enough military capability to discourage the other from escalating further. Yet deterrence is a fragile balance. When one side launches a major attack, the other side often feels pressure to respond. That response can then trigger another escalation, and the cycle continues. The missile barrage toward Tel Aviv highlights how quickly this dynamic can unfold. Within a single night, dozens of missiles crossed the skies above the region. Interceptors launched, explosions lit the night, and millions of civilians were forced into shelters. Moments like these reveal the true stakes of modern geopolitical rivalry. Because the technologies involved, ballistic missiles, air defenses, surveillance systems, operate at incredible speed. Decisions that once took days now happen in minutes, which means the window for diplomacy becomes much smaller. For now, the situation remains fluid. Military forces across the region remain on high alert. Defense systems are prepared for additional launches. And governments around the world are watching carefully, because history has shown that large missile barrages can sometimes mark the beginning of a much larger confrontation. Whether this event becomes another temporary escalation or the start of a broader regional conflict will depend on what happens next. And in geopolitics, the next move can change everything.